Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Hashtag AskRobCo on a Friday. This is your positive happiness vibe for students, young professionals, graduates, anyone in their careers, entrepreneurs, anyone looking for advice, guidance, or just some positivity on a Friday afternoon. I am super excited for our guest today. We've got Rodney Bishop from leading building care homes and assisted living in the UK nationwide with experience all over the world. A great area, care homes, assisted living. So a real specialist today with a crazy amount of experience and knowledge within his specialism and niche in his area. And we're going to get to hear his story, his journey, and also some positivity with that. So as always on a Friday, welcome to the show, Rodney. Really excited to hear about your journey and your story. Just before I let you go, everyone listening and watching, on the right hand side, you've got your questions column. Send in all the questions you wish, and Rodney and I will get through them and give you the answers. Welcome, Rodney.
Thank you, Rob. Really nice to be here on this, what looks to be a sunnyish afternoon, stuck inside and not out on the streets. Thank you for having me.
No, you're more than welcome.
So I thought I would take you right back to when I was 14, 15, 16, when I was still at school, struggling with academia, working out what I wanted to do. My first ever work experience was in a hotel when I was 14, and I loved it. I fell in love with the service sector, meeting lots of different people from different walks of life, and that was the career path that I eventually chose to follow. I left school. I went to university, even though my teachers at school told me I'd never get into university. I did, still not quite sure how, but I got there. And I studied hospitality management. Why am I telling you this? Because my journey in property is a little bit different to most people's. So I went to university in Salford in Manchester studying hospitality. We had to arrange our work placements for our course for a 6-month placement, whilst everybody else was getting jobs in Harvesters and McDonalds and local hotels. I was adamant I wanted to do better. Actually, I'll take you back to my first work experience of 2 weeks at school, when the reference from the job told my teachers, if Rodney reaches for the stars, if Rodney aims for the stars, he'll reach the sky. And that stuck with me forever. The higher you reach, the higher you'll go. So back to university, my placement there, I thought, well, if anybody knows anything about the service sector, it's the Americans and the Canadians. So I sat there before internet, writing, I think it was 150 letters to hotels all over to Canada, all over America, hoping that someone would give me an opportunity to come and work there for my work placement at university. Out of the 150 letters, I was lucky enough to get 4 responses. Not a great response, but the more you put in, the more you get out. If I'd done 50 letters, maybe I've got no responses. I got a job working in a resort off the east coast of America on an island called Nantucket, working in this resort that had 4 hotels. They had boat slips where all these rich people brought their boats. They had cottages. And I got a job working in front desk. Roll on 4 weeks, the new head chef of the new restaurant in the resort arrived, and we became friends. The restaurant was being consulted by Robert De Niro's restaurant group. For me, that was wow. To kind of be connected to Robert De Niro, I wanted to work in that restaurant. So I worked 12, 13 hours a day. When everyone was working 7 or 8 hours a day, I was doing my first part of the day in reception, and then I was going to help out in the restaurant at night. I wasn't being paid for it, but my objective was to get a full-time job in that restaurant. And to do that, I had to give something for nothing. What happened? I became the maitre d' of the island's most exclusive restaurant. I'd never been a maitre d' before. but I wasn't scared to learn. I wasn't scared to work at something that was going to push me out of my comfort zone. To cut a long story short, the funniest story was when President Clinton's chief advisor came in with his family for dinner. I turned him away because the rules were, if you're wearing shorts, you don't get in. I turned this guy away. I didn't know who he was. I'm from Scotland. They're all American. Let's just say I get into a little bit of trouble for turning away the wrong person. But rules are rules. You have to follow them. You don't break them for one person and put them in place for someone else. Finished my placement in America, came back to university. Everyone else had finished theirs at Harvester or Mitchell's and Butler or Travel Lodge or their local hotel. And here I was, I'd just spent 6 months working in America. It was awesome. There's a nice little American word for you. I came back to university. I left university. I went looking for a job, my first job, and after studying, me and the other hundreds of thousands of people looking for the first job, I secured 2 jobs. My first one was to come to London and do management training at Café Rouge. I'm not quite sure how they exist anymore, but they were a big chain of French bistro restaurants. And my other one was to be the first management trainee at Gleneagles in Scotland, a very famous golf resort, 5-star. To explain, if you don't know what Gleneagles is, people go to the Savoy to stay in the Savoy to see London. People go to Gleneagles to see Gleneagles. One of Scotland's premier hotel resorts. So I was their first management trainee in 20 years. So it was a learning curve for both the hotel and for me. And I spent 2 years there. Worked harder than everyone else because everybody wants to trip the management trainee up. They want to find fault, but I never let anybody find fault with me. I always exceeded expectations. I always worked harder than I needed to. I put 120% in when everyone else was putting 80% in. Why? Because I didn't want anyone to trip me up. Rob.
Rodney, let's sorry to interrupt, but let's stop at that one specific point, okay? So you've been through various jobs on your journey, and you've just shared with everyone that you worked harder than everyone else and you didn't want anyone to trip you up. Let's try and go a bit deeper, Rodney, and understand, where has that come from? Is there something happened when you were younger? Is it your parents? Is it your background? Is it your upbringing? What gave you that way of being to have to outwork others so that you didn't get tripped up? Where has that come from?
I think if you're lucky enough to have parents with drive and ambition, then you get it from your parents, but a lot of it comes from yourself and the people around you, your peers or your parents' peers. When you're younger, subconsciously they're guiding you and you don't even know they're guiding you. But actually, my best friends at the time came from a lower working class background, from a single parent family, lived in a council house, and it was that upbringing that drove him to succeed. So 2 different people from 2 different backgrounds with 2 different motivations. My motivation was because I'd learned from my dad that you got to work hard. And if you don't work hard, you don't succeed. His motivation was he wanted to get out of, he didn't want to be living or providing the upbringing to his children that he had received. So 2 very different ways of life. I was fortunate enough to have a good upbringing with parents that were successful and didn't struggle. I never wanted to have to rely on my parents to succeed. And I understood from my dad, to succeed, you've got to put the work in.
Love that. I think it's a very powerful message to share with all the young or developing professional students or grads. Work ethic is a fundamental skill set, discipline, or requirement if you want to achieve. Okay, let's just repeat that. work ethic is a fundamental skill set, discipline, or requirement if you want to succeed in anything that you do. Rodney, were you aware at that time that you were outworking everyone else, and could you acknowledge it internally, or you were just doing it?
Yes and no. I knew that I had to work hard, and I wanted to impress. I wanted to impress because I wanted to always better myself, and I was always going for work that was going to stretch me. When I went to Gleneagles, I wasn't ready for Gleneagles, but I wasn't scared of the challenge, and I wasn't scared to get a job that was beyond me, because all it was going to do was stretch me and push me. And it takes me back to reach for the stars, aim for the stars, and you'll reach the sky. If I went to get a job in a 3-star hotel, once I left there, getting a job in a 5-star hotel would have been very difficult. But because I'd aimed for the top, I can always work my way down. So starting in a 5-star hotel, it would be very easy to get a job in a 3-star hotel.
I love that, Rodney. I'm just going to share something with you because I have a very similar mindset. And when I got into property, I wanted to work for the biggest real estate company in the world, and or be the biggest real estate owner a la Donald Trump, not the 2021 version before I start getting the whole world jumping on me, but the 1980s or 90s version that was accumulating real estate. Okay, so not the individual, the fact that he was growing a property empire. I wanted to reach for the sky or the stars, like you said, and professionally, I wanted to work for the biggest real estate company in the world, which was CBRE. And that's exactly what I did, because I wanted to work for the biggest and the best. That was my outlook at that moment in my life. So sorry to interrupt. I just want to share a bit of a backstory to show how aligned we are, one, with our thinking, and two, with our paths in life. Carry on.
I'm not going to spend too much time on my previous history, but just to give you an idea. So I worked indirectly for Robert De Niro. I did my official training at Gleneagles. I then worked on the Olympics in Sydney. I managed to land a job working in the Olympics in Sydney for NBC Television. I came back, I was the catering manager at Twickenham Rugby Stadium. I then went to Greece and I ran the catering for the opening and closing ceremonies of the Greek Olympics. At which point, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to work in catering. I didn't want to be yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir anymore. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I managed through a friend to get an interview to work for a small niche property agency in London. And they weren't sure whether they wanted me. I'd already interviewed estate agents, and I never really wanted to be an estate agent, but I kind of liked property. I kind of liked looking at building sites and wondering what people were doing. So I'd already gained an interest in real estate. I didn't want to be an estate agent. I managed to skip that part and get a job at a property consultancy. They weren't sure whether to take me on. So I took a risk and said, listen, I'll move to London. I'll come and work for you for 3 months for free. I don't want a salary, but if I do a deal, you pay me commission. I was willing to commit my time at my expense to prove to them that I was the right fit for them. Risk for them, not really.
I love that, because this week I just did a lecture for property students at university, and the exact message you've just said is the exact thing I told them. I said to CBRE, I will work for free. I want to work with you, and I want to prove to you that I'm worthy of being with you, and I'm happy to work for free. And one of the reasons I wanted to work for free, one is to prove them, but the other was because I wanted to be educated. And to be educated, you have to learn and work your trade. Okay, it's great university studying, but you've really got to work your trade. So I wanted the opportunity to be educated, And the way to do that was going to the best education school in the professional working world, which at that time was CBRE. The second thing that came out of the lecture this week was one of the students said, I love property because it's real and you see it and it's everything around you in the built environment. And that's what attracts me to it, rather than be sat on a computer working numbers that you don't even understand what they mean. And really, that's one of the things that you've just clearly said attracted you to property and real estate. And I believe millions of people are attracted to the industry because of that, and that's why they're so passionate about it. Carry on.
I think what's really important, especially now and going on, as you know, as we come out of the current state of the economy, the world, Corona, people have got to be more willing to give something for nothing. If you want to get somewhere, you've got to be willing to give something for nothing. You've got to accept that if you know nothing, admit that you know nothing and be willing to learn. Somebody that's been working in a business for 20 years knows a lot more than you. When you start out, don't question them, accept. And if you still don't want to accept, quietly, without anyone knowing, go and do some research. Use Google, go and learn. Push yourself and really gain knowledge, just not from those around you, but do research, read books, listen to podcasts, and build your knowledge and make you a better person, because it's only you that is going to benefit from all of this. I went to work in a niche agency and I knew nothing, but I didn't proclaim to know anything. But I taught myself a lot, and they taught me a lot as well. As an example, feasibility studies on development, they didn't tell me anything about that. They just said, go and sell that building. But I quickly learned, if I understand what I'm selling, it's going to be a lot easier. So I created, using tools on Google and ultimately using Excel, a development feasibility study that I still use to this day, because I understand it. I put my numbers in and it tells me if something works. And now as a developer, I'm still using the same tool to determine whether I want to buy something or not. Because if in my feasibility the numbers don't work, I'm not going to buy it. And when I was an agent, why should I expect somebody else to buy something if I can't see it working with my limited knowledge? I was always adding to my knowledge. So when I went to speak to somebody and offered them a property, I had a little bit of knowledge of what I was talking about.
So Rodney, if students or fact packet development valuations back in the day are working off a third, what's your model working off?
4.5. So I, on a fag packet, I'll divide the GDV by 4.5 to 5 to give me my land value. Not a third anymore. Labor costs have gone up, material costs have gone up. You know, there's lots of, we've got more taxes. You've got community infrastructure levies, which, you know, I'm looking at something at the moment, it's £185 per square metre. So all of a sudden it's £1 million on top of the development cost. If I'm doing residential, I've got to give back to social housing, whether it be your equivalent to council housing, shared ownership, or intermediate key worker housing. That has very little value in my development. I can only value on the private sale residential, not that I do residential private sales. So the other thing is that when I was started working out in the property sector, I was lucky enough to not have to become an estate agent. However, if I was a young kid today and I was 16 or 17, I would go and get a job in an estate agency, not because I'm going to like working Saturdays and working long hours and getting home at 8 o'clock at night. It's because it's going to give me the solid knowledge and understanding of the sector. So when I progress, I've started at the bottom and I've gained a solid knowledge, because Rodney, everything is a stepping stone.
I'm sorry to keep on interrupting you. It's just that everything you're saying is so relevant. What do you think I did when I was 16 and a half in my summer intern of my A-levels? I went and worked for an estate agency, and you know what happened that summer? I went home. I said, Mum, I'm not going back to school. I love doing this. She went crazy, slammed the door, basically said, your life, do what you want. And I never looked back. And you know, your advice, you're not just telling it off the cuff here. You know, that's exactly what my path and journey was. I stopped my education. I'm not telling anyone to do that, but I went to an agency and I learned the trade, and that's what you got to do.
Look, I think also if you're hungry and you want to succeed, knowledge is power. So you could go at 16, leave school with no education. I wasn't an academic. Doing the equivalent to the A levels just wasn't going to work for me. It was a waste of my time. But I stayed on to went to school. I went to college. I got equivalent to a BTEC. But I would say if you're 16, 17, 18, you don't know what to do, but you want to work in property, go and get that job. Prove to them that you can do it. Try and study in the evening as well. Get your BTEC as well as study as your work. You know, put 120% in, because you'll only get 120% back. You only get back what you put in. Work till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Do courses, read books, work harder than the next person. Show your boss that you're better than the next person, because that person wants to show the boss that they're better than you. Take all the knowledge, learn from other people, learn from people that are older, more experienced than you. Meet as many people, network, build your network. It's hugely important. There's a conference in the south of France once a year, although it's not happened the last couple of years, that I used to go there and I'd be cheeky. I'd go up to people and introduce myself and like, who are you? And I'd make them laugh and they'd give me 2 minutes of their time. And rather than then leaving me, I'd leave them, because I've got another 1,000 people to meet. And by the end of like 3 days in the south of France, I maybe had 500 business cards. And to this day, I can still pick up one of these business cards, phone one of these people, and they know exactly who I am, because I left a lasting impression, a positive lasting impression, because personality is so important.
Love all of this, Rodney. You're sharing such amazing stuff. Okay, so let's go from the boutique to Dukesmead and what you're doing now, and then we're going to go into questions. We've got so many questions. We're probably going to overrun by about 5 to 7 minutes, if that's all right with you, just because we've got so many questions.
No problem. Listen, if I can help somebody, or if somebody wants to reach out to me, I'd gladly hear from them. So I left the property company at the last crash, and I set up my own agency, property agency, commercial, not estate agency. And I was lucky enough, because I focused on building my network, I had managed to get an in with some restructuring bankers and some receivers. So I then steps on behalf of banks and receivers, not something everybody's lucky enough to do, but thank goodness it worked out for me, because I was selling assets that my old employers couldn't get. Personality, building relationships, it's all so important. And that because of that work that I put in, this is what I was getting out of it. Anyway, I decided to get out of agency. I'd spent 10 years with my own business as an agency, and I'd sold a lot of care homes. And so I learned an agent's perspective on care homes, sites and existing homes. I then went to help me, I set up a business working with a care home provider, buying land to get planning. I'm still doing that today. The company is now mine. It's not theirs. It's my business. I'm buying land all around the country, getting planning to build state-of-the-art care homes, to put in a care home operator as a leaseholder in a purpose-built home for them that creates a institutional investment. And what that means is that tenant is a good quality tenant, like your McDonald's, but it's not McDonald's, but a good quality blue chip tenant. They take a 35-year lease on the property, and that has significant value. But it's a long game. You can't, it doesn't happen overnight. I'm working on a site I've been working on for 2.5 years, but I know that at the end of the process, I'm going to reap the reward.
I know you use McDonald's as an example, and it's a good one, because the model is like a model, McDonald's model. Also very similar to maybe hotels and travel lodges,
Correct.
etc., etc. That's the exact same model that you're getting your land, you're getting planning, and then you're leasing out that to an established blue chip company and creating the investment. Love it. Brilliant.
And look, I'm still here today. I bought a site a year ago. I was so happy because this was going to be an amazing care home site. I've been to a pre-application with the council for the care home, and they basically closed the door on me. My investors weren't best pleased. We then went for another pre-application meeting on a different scheme. They didn't like that scheme, but they told me that the site was perfect for residential. My second scheme I would have broken even on. We've yet to go to the next stage of planning for this scheme, but on this scheme we'll do very well. But I've been persistent. I've relied on other people's knowledge and experience, my consultant, my planning consultant, my architect, my ecologist, because these guys eat, sleep and breathe their discipline and I don't. So I have to rely on them. I pay a bit more for better knowledge because in the long term, better knowledge gives me better results. If I pay less and get half-hearted results, I'm not going to achieve what I want. So for everything, it's always about what you put in is what you get out. You really need to be willing to put in 120%.
Brilliant. Thank you. Rodney, we're going to go super fast through the questions now. So let's do this. How can a new employee perform at work?
Work harder than the next person and learn, build your knowledge and understanding of what you're doing, and don't always be looking for approval. Just work harder and know more than the next person, because there's 100 other people that are doing the same, so you've got to be better than the next.
What's the difference between business and working and academics and studying?
Academics and studying will give you a baseline knowledge, but it won't give you a commercial experience. I'd suggest that if you can get a university degree, do. But if you don't feel you're capable of it, go out and get a job. Be willing to start in the bottom and learn, because your industry experience is so important. And just because you don't have a degree, you might have to work harder than the next person, but you might end up being better than the next person.
Brilliant. So the next question was, what happens if you're a student and you fail? How does that affect the next 10 years of your life?
Depends what you do. Really, you know, if you're studying geography and you fail, but you go and get a job in an estate agency or a property company, you're going to learn from your job. University is not about getting a first or second class honours degree. It's about the life experience. Life experience is really important because it grows you as a person.
Great.
Don't go and flunk your course though, because it's work hard.
Next question, interesting one this. How do you overcome emotions in life and work?
Breathing. I think breathing is so important. I think, you know, you can't look at somebody and think, oh, their life's so much better, their life is so much easier, because if you do, you just got to stop and say, well, listen, do you know what? I'm going to achieve like they've achieved. I'm going to put in more. But if I'm stressed, just take a step back, take a deep breath, you know, and just reevaluate.
Great. Maybe someone looking for a job here, but says here, would you accept a postgrad to come and work for you for free?
100%. as long as listen, I'm a hard boss. You know, it's not easy working for me.
Rodney, I cheated a little bit because the second part of the question was, can I send you through an email?
Listen, I'm all about, you know, when I set up my agency, my staff were all lower middle class stroke working class kids that didn't have much going for them. They've now gone on to successful careers. And maybe that was a fault of mine. But I'm very much about, listen, I work in the care sector. I care about others, and I want, my legacy, I want it to be because I've helped somebody else grow as a person.
Love that. Love that. Last two questions. What's your viewpoint in specialism, especially within property, and share your thoughts around your subject, so assisted living, care homes, and maybe some other specialisms?
I think it depends what age you are, what experience you've got. But I think to start with, gain a general knowledge, gain an understanding of property. And once you've got that and you want to specialize, it's a bit like being a doctor. Start with the basics and then choose the path you want to go on. I chose care sector because I've learned a lot about it. That is the path that I'm going down. But I also understand residential. So for me, care is my priority, but residential is my backfall. So if I don't get care, then my next step, when I buy a project, I've got to have a second option, and my second option is always residential. So I would get a general knowledge and then decide what path you want to go down, but just always expand your knowledge.
Love that. So care homes, assisted living, we're in February 2021. We're in the third lockdown of the first global pandemic really in over a century now. How does that affect your market, both a year ago or March 2020, throughout 2020, and how does that change in 2021, 2022, and the medium to long-term future, just because it's so pertinent with everything that's happening at the moment?
Well, actually, the care sector's evolved quite a lot over the last sort of 5 years from the last crash. So let's say 12 years, where care home businesses were growing because they were buying buildings that had been converted and extended. So a house that had an extension and another extension that ultimately became not fit for purpose. The room sizes weren't right. Being able to actually a bit of a danger because you get staircases, you get cables here. These buildings were not fit for purpose. So some of these big corporate businesses went out of business. Now, people still need to be going to care homes. The elderly generation is growing. We're going to have more and more need for care homes, but they've got to be the right care homes. They've got to be the right buildings. They've got to be designed the right way. And what has Corona done to it? Well, it's stopped us because obviously there's still huge demand, but design has changed. We need to take into consideration a change in design of care homes to allow for such a thing to happen again. More space, ability to move around a care home without coming into contact with other people. There will always be a demand for care homes and a senior living. It's just the way it is because people can't always look after themselves at home.
Brilliant. Care homes, what a great specialism in property. Absolutely love it. Okay, so last question of the day, which is how we end every show every week. Rodney Bishop, what impact, whether you or Dukesmead, or what impact do you want to have on the world, and what positive message do you want to send to the audience on this sunny Friday afternoon?
Have a great day. No, I think for me, it's about care. It's about the community. It's about giving back something that's needed. If I'm going to build a block of flats, I'm all about money. When you're in the care sector, it's not all about, profit is important, but it's about giving back. We're also looking at schemes for adults with learning difficulties. They don't make a profit, but it's about giving back to the community. Also, giving young people opportunities. Everybody deserves an opportunity, but they've got to put 120% in. If they come and work for me, they've got to put 180% in. So my message for this Friday is, you know what? If you're feeling a bit down because things are a bit rubbish at the moment, everybody's in the same boat. So pick yourself up and crack on and learn and grow and have ambition to succeed.
Amazing, Rodney Bishop. You are a star. And like you said, opening the show, we should all reach for the sky and hopefully the stars as well. Love that. Great outlook on life. What a brilliant Friday afternoon. What a great positive piece of motivation, education, and inspiration from Rodney Bishop. Thank you, everyone, for your great questions. Thank you for joining every week. Super grateful across all the platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So grateful for all of your amazing support, your kind words. And this show is here for you. It's here to help and inspire and give you that extra push and step, hopefully in life, to do something better or achieve or just be happy. Thank you so much, everyone.
Can I just add one last little thing?
Go for it.
If you're at a crossroads or you've got any questions, listen, I'm always available for a chat. Not so much a coffee at the moment, but feel free to give me a call anytime if you've got any questions. My web is dmph.co.uk, but I'm sure Rob will let you have my contact details. Rob, thank you so much for having me.
No, that's brilliant. Anyone that wants to contact Rodney, dmph.co.uk, but you can get his details from me. Very kind of you, very generous. And yes, we are all here to help. This is what this platform is all about. And hopefully we can add value in your lives. Have a great weekend and thank you very much. Thanks, Rodney. You've been great.
Thanks, Rob. Take care.